Don't worry, I did a dozen.
The clerk indicates to me that we have 2 minutes before we will start.
And Jeff, I do see that we are live streaming. If you can just confirm whenever you're ready.
Here you go, Jeff. There's a medal for you right here.
Oh, I like it. Thank you.
There you go. And it's not chocolate either, so that's good.
Aaron, you're now the host.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
I just want to let SMT know really quickly, because this is a workshop and our format is a little bit different. If they wish you, please feel free to have your video on throughout the meeting as well.
Well, thank you very much, members of council, and to staff and ladies and gentlemen. I will call this official council meeting better described as a workshop with no exception, no decisions will be made. That's procedurally. And again, the virtual world out there is part of this as well. I should make mention that we will be splitting out into groups a little bit later on. And again, I'll be guided with me, the clerk is with me at least 2 hockey sticks apart to make sure that we procedurally do this in the correct manner. She will be also outlining what we'll be doing in a little wee bit more detail in just a moment. And as mentioned there, Aaron is going to be, for the most part, directing traffic here with this workshop here today. But Andrew, I'll be coming to you in just a moment to see if you have any opening remarks after I go to our clerk for just to set out exactly the way this agenda is going to work. So, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. As the mayor mentioned before we get started, I wanted to note that this is an open meeting. It is being live streamed and will be posted on our website following the meeting. As the mayor mentioned, later in this electronic workshop, there will be virtual breakout rooms of 3 members of council each, intended for members to share ideas on topics. These breakout groups will not include a quorum of council. No decisions will be made in the breakout groups, nor will any motions be passed in the breakout groups. These breakout groups of 3 will report back their thoughts and ideas to council as a whole when council resumes as a group.
Do you have any opening comments?
Great, thanks, Mayor. We're excited to work with you today on this important initiative, the council staff work plan. As you'll recall, that we met for the first time to discuss this initiative back on March 9th, where you provided us with direction on a framework for our work plan, the strategies that are important to you this term, and the potential initiatives you might consider as priorities. We told you we would return with the results of the employee consultations and a review of the recent community feedback to help refine these priorities further. How the world has changed since March 9th. Since we last met, our organization, our community, and the world have experienced unprecedented challenges that come with the global pandemic of this magnitude. As a team, we've stepped back to consider what implications this has for our work plan this term and how we can take what we're learning and incorporate it into this exercise. Aaron Ohaski of Boulevard Strategy Group is rejoining us today as our facilitator. And since we met last time, she's been working with municipalities to have them pivot their strategic planning to consider COVID-19 implications, and here to help us do the same. We come to you today with what we've heard from employees, what we're hearing from the community, and some ideas of how we might reemerge stronger after COVID-19. We look forward to hearing your feedback on which initiatives you might consider as priorities. Senior staff will be working right along with you today to provide any information, expertise, or clarification you might need throughout the group exercises. I thank you, and we're looking forward to getting started.
Well, Andrew, again, thank you very much for that brief introduction. One small editorial on my part there. Things definitely have changed significantly since that early March meeting, and we're certainly all well aware. So it's a different world out there. So thank you. So Aaron, over to you now. As I indicated earlier on, you're going to be leading us through this here. And you might find me having to jump in from time to time, but it's my intention to keep it very orderly and hopefully have this very productive. Aaron, thanks, and welcome up to you. Now, the clerk rightfully advises me that I should determine if there's any disclosures by any member of council before we proceed. Those formalities are very important. I'm not seeing any, so we will proceed. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Krantz, and thanks to all of you. Good afternoon. I hope everyone had some time for lunch before we got started today. I know many of you have commitments at 3 o'clock, so we are going to do our utmost, and I hope you'll allow me the ability to keep things on track throughout the afternoon until 3 o'clock. Our target is to get you out in time for those commitments. Before we get started, I just wanted to say a quick note of thank you. As Andrew said, the world has changed dramatically since we met on March the 9th. Thank you to all of you for your leadership. I'm sure when you decided to run for office back in 2018, you never anticipated you'd be leading your community through a global pandemic. So as a resident and someone who just has the utmost respect for the roles that you and your staff are playing right now, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. So in terms of, before we get started, you'll recall on March 9th, this is the point in the meeting where I would tell everybody some housekeeping items. I'd let you know where the emergency exits are. I'd let you know where the bathrooms are, but in this scenario, I'm going to assume you know where those things are and the places you're located. So rather from a housekeeping perspective, what I'd like to do is test a functionality within Zoom meetings. It's called nonverbal feedback. What I'd like everybody to do is you should have a participants button on your screen, just a button that says participants. If you don't have it clicked on already, if you go ahead and click on participants, you should get a list of everybody who's on the call. At the bottom, you'll see some buttons. One is a yes, a check mark. Another is a no, which is an X. Go slower, go faster, and then you'll see a more button with 3 dots. When you click on that, you'll see a thumbs up, you'll see a thumbs down, you'll see a wave, and you'll see a coffee mug. I'd like to test that out because during today's meeting, I know we want to keep things on schedule. I know we want to keep things on track. And you might see things that are coming up on the screen that you're either really excited about, you're recalling our discussion from March 9th, and you get excited. Then if you see something like that, then feel free to give a thumbs up. I'll see it come up on the participant list and I'll know kind of where your thoughts are. If you see something that we discussed on March 9th or something that maybe came out of the consultations that you're really uncomfortable with, you're not sure about, go ahead and give a thumbs down. So let's test that functionality. We're going to do, I'm going to ask some questions and you go ahead and use the thumbs up and thumbs down features. So let's talk about the sports we're most excited to participate in once it's safe to do so, once public health directives allow us to do so. So let's go with hockey first. If you're excited to get back on the rink, give me a thumbs up. If that's not your thing, give me a thumbs down. Great. Great. So I'll go ahead and clear that one. What about tennis? Who's excited to hit the tennis courts in a safe way? Some strong opinions on tennis. There were some quick thumbs down there.
Try
Okay.
badminton.
Okay. Let's go. I'm going to clear tennis. What about cricket? Who's excited to participate in cricket? That's great. Some cricket players here. Wonderful. And let's do one more. How about swimming? Who's excited to hit the pools? Great. Great. So that seems to be working for everybody. That's exciting. So again, if there is times in the meeting where, you know, you're not going to maybe feel comfortable interjecting, you want to keep things on track, but you want to know, you want to give me an indication and all the rest of the participants an indication of what you're thinking about what's coming up on your screen, feel free to use that thumbs up and thumbs down feature. If you have to leave for any reason, if you need a bio break or going to get a snack, if you could just put the coffee mug or the clock up on the screen, just so I know you haven't gotten lost somewhere in the internet, that would be great. Okay, so that is working. That's wonderful. Let's get into the presentation objectives for today. So there are 3 objectives for today's workshop. The first is just a quick refresh. March 9th was a long time ago, and it was certainly a different era. So I wanted to give you a refresh of the framework we discussed on March 9th. Before we begin, I also just want to make sure that everyone has the documentation that were forwarded either late last week or early this week. There was an interim report circulated to you, as well as a group exercise workbook, an exercise toolkit. So if you didn't get a chance to review the background paper, no worries, we're going to be going through many of that today. But I do want to make sure that everybody has that group exercise toolkit on hand, because it's going to be very useful to you when you go convene in your breakout groups and then report back what you discussed to all of council. So just want to make sure from a housekeeping perspective that you have those things on hand. So getting back to the objectives, first is to refresh what we talked about on March 9th. We talked about a framework that was all about making sure that the municipality is helping transition Milton through a period of high growth in the most financially sustainable way possible. And we talked about the concept of scale, how as a community we're growing, but we have to make sure that we are making the most efficient and smart uses of resources. So we scale along with that in the most efficient way possible. We talked about 4 ways to do that: planning for growth, increasing revenue potential, increasing community attractiveness and competitiveness, and innovating when it comes to services, thinking differently about how those services are delivered in the community. Since March 9th, we have undertaken a bit more analysis, and the second objective is to share that analysis with you. We engaged in a community, an employee engagement campaign where we heard from employees, their views on the council staff work plan. We reviewed recent community feedback. I know you've had community engagement initiatives with some of the largest feedback ever from your residents. So we reviewed all of that feedback against what was developed on March 9th. And then the third consideration, we knew that the world has changed significantly since March 9th. So together with your strategic management team, we sat down to talk about what we're learning from the COVID-19 experience, where maybe we need to catch up a bit, and all within the viewpoint, the objectives, to seeing what we can do within this work plan to not just survive the COVID-19 crisis, but figure out what recommendations we might have for you on how Milton can emerge stronger from COVID-19. So we'll share that with you. And then the third objective is to get your feedback on what your priorities might be. This will take the majority of the meeting, and you'll recall back on March 9th, what we talked about is that you have a choice as a council. You can choose to pick many different priorities, and you can go inches on all of them, or you can zero in and pick those that you think are the most strategically significant for this term of council and go miles. So that's your choice, and something that I'll leave with you today. The other thing we discussed on March the 9th was that if this were an initiative, an exercise in making sure 100% of council was feeling 100% satisfied with the outcome of this work plan, it would take till the end of your term, and we probably wouldn't get very far. So really our objective is to make sure that you at least hit as individuals that 70% level of comfort. Knowing that we're not all going to get to 100%, that if 100% of you are 70% comfortable, that's our success target during this exercise. Okay, so a quick refresh on the strategic planning process. Oh, I think I just stopped sharing my screen there. There we are. So this was initially a 6-phase process that's turned into a 7-phase process over the course of the last 2 months. So we reviewed critical documents and spoke with many of you in the early phases. We worked together on March 9th in phase 2 to develop a decision-making framework and a framework for your work plan. And later in March, we engaged employees in this process. Later that month, we reviewed the community feedback, and you'll see this new phase. This phase 5 is assessing COVID-19 implications. So that wasn't in the slide you saw back on March 9th, but something certainly was prudent to take a look at as the situation evolves. Determining priorities was what we're doing today. And then of course, we're targeting your meeting on July 20th, 2020 to present the final work plan to you for approval. So our collective challenge today, again, what we were talking about on March 9th is that Milton is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. You know, there's debate on whether you're the 6th, the 2nd, the 3rd, but we know that Milton is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada, and that growth continues. And, you know, from information on site plan applications and building permits, that growth is even continuing during the pandemic. So our challenge that I discussed with many of you back when we were having telephone conversations is accommodating this growth in a way that's going to be financially sustainable over time, thinking about new ways of doing business, thinking about community planning to help Milton through that period of high growth and making sure the community is fiscally sustainable over the long term. The framework we discussed on March the 9th was fourfold. So how do we help Milton scale? The first is planning for growth. The second was increasing revenue potential. The third goal was increasing community attractiveness and competitiveness. And the fourth was innovating services, thinking differently about how we deliver services in the most effective and efficient way possible. Under each of these focus areas, each of these 4 focus areas on March 9th, you helped us establish what the goal was for each. You helped us establish what strategies generally you want to guide the work this term. And you started brainstorming what are those initiatives we might want to consider as priorities. You recall on March 9th, the objective was to brainstorm. It was to cast the net very wide and think about all of the potential initiatives that might advance these goals. The objective of today is to zero in. It's to try and narrow the focus, again, going miles on a few of the most strategically significant items, not inches on a whole myriad of potential priorities. So let's look into each of these in detail. Under planning for growth, the goal statement was there that you developed was we will plan our community to accommodate growth while minimizing new service and infrastructure demands and mitigating tax increases. The general strategies you thought should shape what the priorities might be is planning for mid-density mixed-use neighborhoods, providing direction and policies that encourage sustainability, encourage greater infill and neighborhood intensification, providing transportation options that alleviate congestion, completing an asset management plan to make evidence-based decisions, creating long-term capital forecasts for infrastructure, and ensuring the necessary services are in place as residents moved into neighborhoods. I heard from a few of you, it's been a challenge when these new neighborhoods go in and residents move in and the services aren't yet available and they have to wait. And I know that from a provincial advocacy perspective was something that was important. The second was increasing revenue potential. The goal statement there is we will achieve sustainable new revenue streams. The focus may have changed to making sure that your revenue streams that you have are intact during COVID-19, as well as encouraging new sustainable revenue streams. And of course, these general strategies that you directed us back at that time, or provided the feedback rather, is to create a balanced tax base through a more employment lands and economic development, leveraging user fees to reduce service subsidies, leveraging advocacy efforts of municipal industry associations, and identifying and pursuing funding program opportunities so Milton gets its fair share of grant assistance. And something else you raised, not sure if it's as relevant today, is increasing tourism opportunities as a potential revenue source. Of course, we'll go into the tactics you started brainstorming in just a bit. We're just going into the goals and strategies right now. The third is community attractiveness and competitiveness, where you really felt it was important to improve the attractiveness of the community for prospective talent and investment. Some of the general strategies that you discussed back on March 9th is securing that post-secondary presence, providing innovative recreational facilities, quality and accessible parks and trails, attractive public spaces and programming, developing a large-scale transit strategy with partnerships, leveraging community strengths, demonstrating leadership and sustainability, and attracting quality retail outlets. And we'll get into the tactics in a moment. Service innovation, the fourth and final, the goal that you set was we will address increased expectations and requests while minimizing the need for new investment. So there's an acknowledgement as your community grows, there's an increasing volume of service requests. Also, the nature of those service requests are changing. People are moving in from maybe larger areas where they're used to a different level of service. So expectations are changing across the board. So how can Milton think differently about the way it delivers services? The general strategies are investing in employee engagement as the foundation of strong customer service. Employees who are fired up to come into work every day are those who are going to deliver strong customer service. Modernize processes that might be considered slow or bureaucratic. Exploring integrated technology platforms that improve automation. And of course, this has become so much more important in the COVID-19 era as digital service delivery is certainly becoming what the municipal sector and industries across the board are pursuing. Engaging external firms in objective service delivery reviews. Exploring service delivery partnerships with other municipalities. Building and enhancing data and information. Many of you felt like you needed more evidence, potential dashboards, so you can make informed decisions as a council. And then realizing efficiencies through partnerships and multi-use facilities. So that's just a brief refresh of what you talked about on March 9th. Let's talk about what's happened since March 9th. So three categories of analysis has happened since we last met. The first is employee consultations. We spoke with employees from across the organization, from all employee groups about their views. We reviewed recent community engagement campaigns, especially the We Make Milton campaign and the budget survey to see what themes we could glean from those. And then we discussed with your strategic management team what challenges and opportunities have come out of COVID-19 and how can we take this COVID-19 experience and incorporate it into the work plan to help Milton thrive when we finish this experience. In terms of the employee engagement, how we attained the input was we had a kickoff lunch event. So employees were invited over their lunch hour to join the strategic management team to provide their feedback. We had postcard feedback forms available at the event for folks to fill out. We also made those postcard feedback forms available at various municipal facilities. So if individuals weren't able to join us on their lunch hour, perhaps they have different shifts, that they still had the opportunity to access those. We also distributed an online survey to all Town of Milton administrative accounts. And as a result of this, we received 104 responses from Town of Milton employees, which considering that kicked off on March 11th and things really started to shut down on March 13th. So considering the environment we were operating in, very positive response rate from employees. So what did employees say? In terms of the feedback, there was a general sense that staff are spread really thin. Some of the key themes that came out were staffing levels, benefits and work environment. And while there were a few comments related to compensation, a lot more comments related to training and development, flexibility in the workplace, fitness memberships, those sorts of things. So I would say those ones outweighed the comments related to compensation. There were comments related to how operationally we can improve our business processes by investing in more automation, and then as well as service innovation. A lot of staff saw a huge opportunity in increasing levels of digital delivery to help members of the public access those services in a way that they might prefer, as well as take some of the pressure off of traditional service delivery channels. So considerations in terms of the initiatives you discussed back on March 9th, the same initiatives came up from employees in terms of customer service strategy, having an IT strategy for digital service delivery, the official plan, the asset management plan, transit master plan, and secondary plans. Urban design was something that many employees were excited about, and the people strategy. I'd say that your corporate people strategy is probably what came out the strongest from the employee feedback. And the people strategy, the way it's currently designed, is set up in a way that's going to address a lot of those issues that your staff mentioned. We also reviewed recent community feedback. So again, we looked at all of the spreadsheets that came out of the We Make Milton campaign back when residents and businesses were inputting into your official plan engagement. We looked at the budget survey that was completed in late 2019 in advance of the budget call report. And then of course, you recall each of our individual discussions where I spoke with each of you one-on-one about what you're hearing from the community. A huge input, because collectively, many of you, when taken together, spoke with tens of thousands of residents during the election campaign, and you continue to speak with residents each and every day. So your input, and that's very important. In terms of some of the initiatives that came out through that, obviously the official plan and the related secondary plans were a huge theme because of the focus of the We Make Milton campaign. The asset management plan was very important in terms of what we gleaned from the budget survey. There was a lot of feedback related to moving and connecting and how people get around with transit. So that relates to the transit master plan, as well as regional transit partnerships. A lot of positive feedback related to the Milton Education Village and Innovation Center. And then we know through the budget survey, an area where residents who participated in that survey felt like service levels and investments should be increased was related to economic development. So in terms of what you talked about on March 9th, that relates to the economic development strategy, as well as those major plans to support economic development, such as increased office space, the Trafalgar Corridor, Egerton, and Dairy Green. Okay, so let's talk about how the world has changed since March the 9th and what communities are experiencing as a result of COVID. So earlier this month, we spoke with your strategic management team, focusing on which of the existing initiatives you've been discussing have increased in importance as a result of COVID-19. Which additional initiatives might help Milton emerge stronger? And we looked at this through 5 lenses. The first was financial sustainability, and relative to other municipalities of your size and in the general location, your community is faring very, very well from a financial sustainability perspective. Of course, no one is out of the woods yet. You never know what's going to happen if a second wave is in the books for Ontario and Canada, but certainly Milton, as compared to others, is in a very, very strong financial position. In terms of service delivery, we talked a bit about service delivery and the importance of enabling automation and digital service delivery as a way to keep both your customers, the residents and businesses, as well as your employees safe, and to continue to provide that option even when those public health directives have lifted. We talked about the changing needs of your workforce. Your community, your staffing has been incredibly agile throughout this process, very responsive and changing to the needs in a very short amount of time. What are the needs going to be as Milton starts to reopen and as employees return to either normal or a new normal? We talked about the local economy, and here another area where your community is faring relatively well compared to others. We know that through the work that you've been doing on your economic development task force and other, some of the video chats you've been having, speaking with your economic development team, we know that there's increasing demand for that kind of that office, the warehousing space, logistics speaking. You also have a very strong core in some of the industries that are doing very well right now. So that's extremely positive as well. The last thing we talked about was community support. What does the community need outside of these areas? And we know that your community services department is working really closely with your stakeholder groups, your user groups, and others on community partnerships that will help the members of the community out in this time. We know that they've pivoted to digital service delivery for some rec programs. So those are some of the important community supports that have been happening. So when you take all these three new considerations in effect, the employee consultations, you take the community feedback, as well as the COVID-19 analysis, what does this mean for your work plan? And here's where you can take that exercise toolkit, group exercise toolkit, and follow along. If we go through each of those focus areas that we were talking about on March 9th, what you'll find here is you have the focus area at the top. You have the goal that you developed on March 9th. And then in this far left-hand column, you'll see the initiatives that you brainstormed as a group that might help to advance this goal. The initiatives that are in the first row here are initiatives where if I can take you back to March 9th, you recall you each got a limited amount of sticky dots. And you each voted before you left, not voted, but provided feedback on which were most important to you. The initiatives that are here in this top box above the line are those that seem to rise to the top back on March 9th. The other initiatives were still initiatives that you raised, that were up on all of the whiteboards that we had up. They just didn't receive a critical mass of support as you were all leaving. So that column there really tells you what you discussed back on March 9th. This next column over is the employee consultation. And here you have the initiatives that seem to be coming up from employees during that period of talking to employees through online surveys, feedback forms, and in person. The next one over is initiatives that seem to be rising to the top when we review some of that community feedback. Then you'll see the next column titled COVID-19, Emerging Stronger. Those are some initiatives related to this focus area that we did through our analysis of how Milton might consider emerging stronger. This last column, you'll see it's empty, and it's empty for a reason, because in your breakout groups very shortly, you are going to take a look at what's been developed in each column, and you are going to decide as a group what direction, what feedback you want to provide us on those that you want to consider the priorities for this term of council. So this exists for each of those four focus areas. You'll see here we have our increasing revenue potential focus area with our goal, the results of the March 9th workshop. So those that seem to rise to the top when you used your sticky dots, and then those below the line didn't receive that critical mass back then. What came up from employees? Not much in this area. What came up from the community? What came up through our COVID-19 analysis? And then again, the blank column that's up to you in your breakout groups as you choose your own adventure. Again, we have our community attractiveness and competitiveness focus area with the goal, the March 9th workshop results, those that received a critical mass of dots at the top and others below back on March 9th. Input through employee consultations, input through community feedback, and again, some considerations of what you might want to consider with a different lens now that the community has been coming through COVID-19. And then the last being service innovation. Here we have our goal statement again, what you discussed on March 9th, what didn't receive a critical mass of sticky dots below the line. You have what came up through employee consultations, not much from the community feedback on this particular focus area. And then again, quite a lot of considerations as the community comes through COVID-19. One thing on this, before we leave the service innovation focus area and we hand it over to you and your work groups, something I just want to note that came up very strongly from employees, probably the most strongly, is the people strategy. And certainly as the needs of your workforce change during COVID-19, people strategy continues to be very, very important. So it did receive some sticky dots on March the 9th, but not as much as some of these other things. So that's just one thing that jumped out at us when we were doing the analysis that we wanted to bring to your attention as well as you work on these in your work groups. Okay, I think you have probably heard me speak quite enough about this, and you might be ready to provide feedback at this time. So what we're going to do now, Megan mentioned and the mayor mentioned, we are going to be breaking out into virtual focus groups. And the way this is going to work is exactly the way it did on March 9th. The only difference is that this time it's going to be remote. So we will break you into 3 groups of 3. And in each of your stations, you will have a member of the senior team who has expertise in that subject matter area with you as you discuss what's been developed to date and what you might want to consider going forward as you prioritize your work plan. So we'll have 3 groups of 3. You'll cycle through 15 minutes each, discussing each of those 4 focus areas we went through. And what I'm going to challenge you as a team in your groups of 3 is, can you pick the top 3 most strategically significant initiatives in each of the focus group? So if you come back to the main group and say, okay, well, you know, we had 5, that's okay. But it would be great if you could say, these are our top 3, and maybe these are 1 or 2 that we feel are very important as well. So the challenge in your groups is to see if you can agree within your group of 3 on the top 3 in each. So you'll cycle through 15 minutes each in each of those 4 focus areas. Are there any questions on that before we break into before we break into those 3 groups of 3? I do want to remind you that you'll be coming back and joining the main group and reporting back. So if you could pick a group leader who can kind of record what you've been discussing and speak to the full group, share what your group discussed, that would be important as well. Are there any questions on this before we start moving into groups?
Aaron, I do have one question. It's Andrew.
Yeah.
Just in the event that things have changed a lot and our thinking is always evolving. I know we're trying to pick the top 3, and I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in, but what if there was an extra one that hasn't been thought of? Are we okay with including that, or does that cause concerns for you?
That doesn't cause, thank you for raising that. No concerns with that. But let's say an individual has one. First, you have to convince your group that it's going to be in that top 3. So that's filter 1, and then reporting it back to the larger group. Of course, something that I forgot to mention, Andrew, that your comments, I think, raised is that, you know, when you're picking these initiatives, it's providing a blueprint. It's providing a roadmap. We know that the situation with COVID-19 has changed rapidly over the last 3 months, and it will continue to change. So you might find you need to check in to make sure that these are the right initiatives periodically, to make sure that you're doing the right things in light of the changing environment. So it's not as if we are etching these in stone and you can't reconsider them over the course of this term. That's not it at all. It's just to provide a roadmap based on the information that you have right now as a starting point.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? I'm just waiting an abnormally long time just in case somebody is on mute by accident and wants to ask a question. Okay, I think the awkward silence has gone on a lot enough. So if you'll give me, Troy, did your hand just go up?
Yes, I see in the group chat. Are you looking for a consensus or majority vote?
So neither. We're not. It's a workshop, so we are. We're just getting feedback from you. When the vote will happen is on July 20th, barring any unforeseen circumstances today. We'll come back to you on July 20th for the vote. What we're seeing, what we're trying to get today is just general themes. So we want to see what you and your groups feel are the most important. We also want to compare that with what the other two groups are feeling the most important. When we rejoin together as a larger group, we're going to see where there's alignment and where there seems to be a bit of a departure. And we're going to zero in on those departures to see if we can't explore that a little bit further. Thank you for the heads up about the chat.
Now, Erin, if I could just get you, just let me know when you're ready to stop screen sharing so that when you guys go into your breakout rooms, I can share the screen that we prepared.
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen right now, Nina.
Okay.
And I will start organizing the breakout groups. I'll let you know, in full disclosure, I randomly assigned these, but we assigned the groups previously just to make sure that the ward pairings were broken up a bit to make sure that we have diverse ward perspectives in each of the breakout groups. So full disclosure, they were preordained groups, but just to make sure that we had a good cross section of perspectives from a ward perspective in each group. So this will take me just about 2 or 3 minutes. You will get a join group invitation when I'm finished. You will see at the bottom of your screen an ask for help button. If at any time you have questions, clarifications, technical issues, feel free to press that button and myself or a member of your team will swoop in there and see if we can't help. I will also check in at the beginning of each session to make sure everyone made it there okay. And I'll check in at the 10-minute mark to see how the discussions are going. If we can come back earlier and rotate faster, that's great. If not, we will definitely be cutting off the discussions at the 15-minute mark, and I'll give you a warning when you're about to rotate.
Sorry, Erin, just one more thing. Can we just make Jeff co-host again, just in case? If you don't mind.
Sorry, you just cut out a bit there, Nina. Can you repeat that?
Oh, sorry about that. If you don't mind, just because you're the host now, if you can make Jeff co-host as well, he's under IT, if you don't mind, just so we have him on standby.
No problem. I'll do that.
Thank you.
And Nina, just checking, is Councillor Challoner on the call yet?
No, he is not here today.
Okay, so Councillor Ali and Councillor Best will be assigning you to group 2. If Councillor Challoner joins you, then he'll join in with your group as well. Okay, you'll be getting the invitation now. It's about 12:45, so we'll do our first rotation at 1 o'clock. Troy, you'll find you have some time because there's 3 groups and you are the 4th station. So you'll find that this 15 minutes you'll have as a bit of a break.
Thank you, Erin.
No problem.
I'm just going to do a quick test. Test. Erin, can you hear me? Oh, you just have to unmute.
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I'm just, Carrie, I was just getting a message from her. I don't believe she's in a breakout room. So I'm not sure if she's just on hold right now or.
Well, we hadn't discussed back on June 10th because we assigned based on subject matter areas. If Carrie wants to join one, let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
Carrie, I'll just maybe if you can unmute and just let us know which one and we can go from there.
Hi, sorry, Erin. Probably the group that's going to be discussing potentially the internal communications and customer service.
That'd be with me, Carrie.
Is that okay, Troy?
Yeah, that's no problem. And so we have a bit of a break because we're the fourth and there's only 3 groups of 3. So when we get going, we'll include you in that one.
Okay, thank you.
Erin, I'm just seeing that Councillor Challenor is joining the workshop now. Hi, Councillor
Yes,
Challenor.
I just saw that as well. Hi, Councillor Challenor. So Councillor Challenor, just so I can explain what's been going on, I'm going to invite you to join a breakout group with me privately. So you'll just get an invitation on your screen. I can bring you up to speed and then put you in with the group that that you'll be working along with.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Erin. Are you around? Can you hear me?
Barb, did you get the invitation to join group 3?
No,
Okay,
no.
okay.
I've got no invitation.
Okay, I'm going to move you to room 2 and then back to room 3 to see if you get the invitation. So you'll be joining Councillor Di Lorenzo, Councillor Hameed, and Councillor Malbuff.
Okay. Erin, I'm still not getting anything.
So you should have the same thing that popped up when you went into the first room should be there. Do you have there? Let's see.
I've got, you are viewing Nina Lesseck's screen, and I've got view options. I don't know, do I need to leave this room? But will that leave the meeting? That's the problem.
If it says, you know what, Barb, I would suggest maybe leave the meeting. And Nina, if you're listening, if you could let Barb back in, let's try that.
I'm just going to ask actually Jeff if he's around to do that, just because I'm screen sharing.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff, are you around? I know he's sort of multitasking as usual.
Yeah, I'm around. No problem. I'll let
Oh,
Barb
wait,
back
I
in.
think Barb might have gone there. Hang on a sec. Let me just check.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Thanks for that.
That's okay.
That's what we're here for.
Erin, if I may just ask a question as well, once you have made sure that Barb is in the right room. There she is. Hi, Erin. Can you hear me?
Hi, I can.
Just for the public, because we are live feeding, I was wondering if we could just give an update in terms of how much longer the breakout rooms are going to take, and maybe I'll actually update the screen so that it's a good reflection of how much more time is left.
I anticipate between 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
But they might have a short, if they need a short break after that, we might have a short break.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just going to update that, and then we can post it back online.
Nina, would it be possible to get Councillor Hameed's email? He needs a document from me that I have to send him for his work group.
Yeah. So it's their first last name, so Zeeshan, Zeeshan .Hameed
Yep.
at milton.ca.
Okay. Thank
Actually,
you.
he's
Oh,
just
sorry, no.
he's just
I'm
Z.Hameed.
Z.Hameed. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Z-E-E. Yeah.
Just Z-E dot. Okay. Thanks very much.
Two E's. Yeah. Two E's.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Nina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I just gave them a 5-minute warning that we're going to rejoin in 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm just going to update this so that the live stream on the website is reflected.
So Nina, I just closed the breakout rooms. So everyone will be rejoining in 60 seconds.
Great, wonderful.
Welcome back, everyone. It looks like we have everyone here. So just a reminder, you are back in the live stream portion of the meeting. We're rejoining the meeting now, and we have a quorum of council together. I was able to kind of listen in on some of the discussions. Sounded really exciting what was going on. So what I'm going to do on my screen is I'm going to pull up the workbook exercise document so we can follow along with each other. And I'll go through for each of the focus areas in order. So group 1, that's Mayor Krantz, Councillor Dirksen, and Councillor Cluett. Then we'll hear from group 2, which is Councillor Ali, Councillor Challenor, and Councillor Best. And then we'll hear from group 3, which is Councillor Hameed, Councillor DeLorenzo, and Councillor Malbeuf. Does that sound okay to everybody? Okay, wonderful. So I will just share my screen here. Great. So if I can ask group 1, which was Mayor Krantz, Councillor Dirksen, and Councillor Cluett, who is your spokesperson to tell us what your discussion, how your discussion unfolded in the planning for growth category?
Group 1, Councillor Cluett, he volunteered to be the spokesperson.
Voluntold. But okay, we can do that. So quickly, for the first section here, asset management plan was one of the top 3, and again, no particular order. Milton Education Village, Dairy Green was Milton Education Village was the big part of that, and we also talked about the as one of our top priorities, the mobility hub and transportation, as being one of the other parts, again, in no ranking of the top 3.
Great. Thanks so much, Group 1. As Councillor Cluett captured your top 3. Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Let's move over to Group 2, which was Councillor Ali, Councillor Challenor, and Councillor Best. Who did you assign as your spokesperson for planning for growth? So I'm not sure if someone's talking and they're on mute, or it's just an awkward silence where we're trying to figure out who's going to speak.
Doing this.
What I'll do is I thought Colin might be. I wasn't here for the decision about who would speak. I came later, about 1 o'clock, but certainly was involved in this discussion. There were 3 things here: the official plan and secondary plans. Asset management was the second, and the hub, the mobility hub, was number 3. I think most of the discussion, and it was a great discussion with Barb, really centered on which secondary plan should take priority and why. I think everybody understood the need for asset management and the mobility hub.
Thank you so much. Group 2, anyone want to add anything from Group 2, or you're comfortable with what's on the document right now? Great. Okay, let's hear from Group 3. That was Councillor Hameed, Councillor Di Lorenzo, and Councillor Malbuff. Who is your speaker?
That would be me. So for Group 3, our 3 priorities were the asset management plan, intergovernment advocacy, and then new official plan and secondary plans, which includes all the secondary plans, including some of the other stuff that came up, including things like places of worship and all that other stuff.
And Councillor Hameed, if I can ask on the intergovernmental advocacy, was there any particular issues that stood out there?
No, we talked about a number of issues, and the idea wasn't anything that's not funded by the Milton Council, but upper levels of government. So we talked about schools, we talked about hospital, we talked about all-day go service and new go stations.
Great. Okay, well, let's go through all 4 focus areas before we zero in, because I know some of these initiatives appear in a variety of focus areas. So let's go through all 4, and then we can see how things are unfolding at the end. So let's move down to increasing revenue potential. And thanks so much to Glenn and Andrew for being our staff resources for this focus area. Group 1, let's hear from you first on what you had to say under increasing revenue potential.
Well, the first thing, and again, obviously no particular order, we a lot of discussion was on our economic development strategy. And it kind of ties into the new official plan and the secondary plan advancements as well. Just simply because we have to focus on the diversity for our growth as opposed to residential versus business. So having a strong and economic development management or economic development strategy, along with the new official plans and secondary plans. And then third was advancing all the different projects like the Trafalgar Corridor, Egerton, and the Trafalgar, Dairy Green, I mean.
Wow, it's a lot of pressure to type on live stream. Thanks so much for that, Group 1. Let's hear from Group 2, Councillor Ali, Councillor Challenor, and Councillor Best.
I think Councillor Best has been voluntold to summarize.
Hey, I thought it was you. Okay, this one is revenue potential. Let me just get back here.
Yeah, I think that was way back to the first round for Group 2.
Okay. Yeah, we basically looked at advanced projects to diversify local tax base, economic development strategy, and also development charge update.
Sorry, what was the second one again, Councillor Best?
The economic development strategy.
Okay. And development charge?
Yeah, review.
Great. Thank you so much, Group 2. Group 3, which was Councillor Hameed, Councillor Di Lorenzo, and Councillor Malbuff.
Right. So for Group 3, it was diversifying local tax base, and that includes having shovel-ready projects for grants and funding applications. The second one is MEV and Innovation Center. And the last one is economic development strategy, including increased office space and employment land.
That's great. Thanks so much to all 3 groups for that. Let's move down to community attractiveness and competitiveness. And thanks so much to Christine for providing input and technical expertise to each of the groups there. Group 1, let's hear what you had to say under community attractiveness and competitiveness.
For this one, we obviously we talked about sustainability and trying to focus in on what sustainability means, because I know sustainability strategy will mean different things to different people. We talked a lot about the transit master plan, as well as in combination with the Milton Education Village. But as we ended, we started talking about the diversity strategy as well, as being some of the property a high priority, not only even before what we had, but especially as the society has moved now since May 25th, I believe. We really need to focus, and then that came up as one of our top three, is making sure that we have a good diversity strategy.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you so much, Group 1. Group 2, which was Councillor Ali, Councillor Best, and Councillor Challenor.
I believe it's Councillor Ali's turn.
Okay, yes, it's my turn. Okay. So this is where Troy was, right?
This was Christine.
Oh, Christine. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about the MEV, and that was a consistent trend in all of the rooms we went to. We talked about the MEV first. It's really, really important, especially in, making our community more attractive. It is so important for us to have the MEV there. And then we also talked about regional transit partnerships, because you cannot talk about the MEV and not talk about regional transit as a community that is attractive to people. How do you even get to Milton if you're going to university, or you need that regional transit, right? And then of course we talked about reopening strategy and how we're going to go from where we are now to the next step, and how actually we're going to consolidate our present situation with the pandemic with our long-term goals, because the pandemic is now and it's a short-term goal, so to speak, to reopen. So these are the three things we talked about, and it was a really great discussion.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Group 3, Councillor Hameed, Councillor De Lorenzo, and Councillor Malbuff.
Yeah, I guess we should have rotated speakers, but we forgot to do that. So our number 1 was MEV/Laurier/Conestoga. Our number 2 is, not in any order, but our second one is regional transit connectivity. And the last one is urban design standards.
Great. Thanks so much. Let's move on to the final, and then we can go back and assess how close together the three groups were. So Group 1, let's hear from you first. That was again Mayor Krantz, Councillor Dirksen, and Councillor Cluett.
And we're back. Again, no particular order. We were kind of surprised for one of the items that wasn't on sort of that top below. It was below the line, and that was a people strategy. And I think we truly came to a consensus on the importance of developing that going forward from an employee base. IT digital service strategy, I think, was the second one, followed by customer service strategy as being our top three.
Thank you so much, Group 1. Group 2, which was Councillor Ali, Councillor Challenor, and Councillor Best. Who's up for speaking this time?
I'll take it if you wish.
Okay.
3 very quickly. There is unanimity on this. Customer service strategy, people strategy, and IT digital service strategy. And the people strategy basically supported the other two. It was the foundation for the other two being successful.
Agreed.
Is there anything I can add to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so
if your group's okay with it, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
We just added our communication strategy, especially external communication strategy, to the customer service strategy, because I wanted that to be a big part of that.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Councillor Ali. Appreciate it. Group number 3, which is Councillor Hameed, Councillor De Lorenzo, and Councillor Malbuff.
Yeah, so for us, it's same as the previous group: IT, digital service strategy, people strategy, and customer service strategy.
It's unanimous. There we go.
So before we go back up to the top, let's just close this one really quick. It seems like there is, even when you're separated into breakout groups, the thinking on this is very, very aligned. So Andrew or Troy, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, if there's any concern. I think Troy, you just raised your hand. Over to you.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, there is unanimity amongst the three groups for this, and that was really heartening to see. The one thing that I did want to comment on is the internal communication strategy. Pretty much every group also commented on the importance of that, but it was more wrapped into and can be considered sort of through either the customer service strategy or people strategy, or even the IT service delivery strategy. So even though it was listed as a separate strategy, it's felt that it's sort of interwoven amongst them all.
Thanks so much for that, Troy. So Howard, I think we have our direction there. So no sense in spending too much time on it. If anyone wants to say anything else, I think we've got our direction or our feedback to be able to come back to you on July the 20th with this particular piece. So before I go back up to the top to planning for growth, it's kind of a bit of a speak now or forever hold your peace if you want to provide any more feedback on this one.
If you don't mind, there's just one thing, and I mentioned this to my colleagues as well as the staff that we were speaking with through the process. There's a lot of tactics on these pages that I think to make things clearer should be removed, and perhaps the best way to do that is to have council and staff just go through the document and stroke out, and you based on consensus, Aaron, then knock them off the page, because quite frankly they have potential of confusing, because there's a big difference, as you know, between strategy and tactics, and there are tactics here that just, you know, they fit underneath some of the other larger strategies. The other thing was the COVID-19. That is a strategy, that is a tactic, not a strategy. Not sure why it's there. You know, we should be thinking 3 to 5 years out, and hopefully in 3 to 5 years, COVID is an unfortunate, distant memory.
Absolutely. So I think, Councillor Challoner, to your point, I think we have, you know, we've kind of included some strategies as initiatives on this list, but we certainly have general strategies, which I think up here on the earlier page provide some general direction to staff when they're implementing projects or initiatives, you know, across the organization. But certainly I'm going to take my direction from council or the feedback to come back to you with a final plan based on what's on this final column. So where there's consensus here, that's what's telling me, in your view, based on your feedback and your work groups today, these are the highest priority initiatives that your organization needs to consider. I know when we started this process, we talked about a 3-year time window. So this is telling me, and I'm commenting, but also asking that this in the last column here under the group discussion, those are the initiatives that are going to be marked as the top priorities in your work plan. Does that work for everybody? And I have my participants list up, so feel free to use that thumbs up, thumbs down feature that we practiced at the beginning of the session.
Participants.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so let's move up to the top, up to planning for growth, and see what unfolded there. So we definitely have kind of a unanimous views in the asset management plan. Definitely two groups, oh, there's a spelling mistake there, are looking at the official plan, secondary plan. Two groups looking at mobility hub and transportation. And then we also have the intergovernmental advocacy piece. So I think just a question to staff, because I know when we were discussing these items that you also saw these as priorities. So I'd just like to know, maybe Andrew or Barb, in your view, if these were all priorities, is that a manageable work plan for staff?
Specifically, it's a tricky amount, but we've started down the road with all of those plans, and so we're committed to doing them. Would there be some help in trying to focus on which ones come first? Would be helpful to staff to get council's feelings and thoughts on that.
Thank you for that, Andrew. So based on this, what I'm seeing, what would come first based on unanimous consent might be the asset management plan. And then there would be, secondary to that, official plan, secondary plan, mobility hub, and then with one group saying intergovernmental advocacy, that might provide a framework. Barb, do you want to weigh in before we, with any comments before we ask councillors for their views? I think you're just on mute there, Barb. Let me, there you go.
I agree with Andrew. All of these things are in play. Some of them go to essential structural elements of the community, and others will happen more organically as a result of that structure. So I think there's some alignment in terms of staff and council thinking in that regard.
Aaron, just one other point. Some of specifically the secondary plans will have a lot of influence on where the market goes in terms of the demand for different kinds of developments. And so we are somewhat in a bit of a wait and see, trying to figure out what the market looks like and where developers will want to go with the kind of product that will be most marketable.
Great. Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that maybe the top three in terms of the sequencing, and I'll ask councillors for feedback, is asset management plan, official plan, mobility hub, secondary plans as they make sense to do them based on market demand, and then also the intergovernmental advocacy piece. So I know many of you said these are in no particular order, but if they were in the order, and I can put them on the screen if that's helpful, and then ask councillors to react to this. So I'll put them up here in terms of the level of support we were hearing was asset management plan, official plan, mobility hub, secondary plans, and that's of course market determined, and intergovernmental advocacy. Now, just to keep the online format manageable, do any councillors want to weigh in on this? Councillor Hameed, I saw you raised your hand first, so over to you.
Yeah, I know Andrew touched on this, but just a question: secondary plans, is that not rolled into official plan? Is it something different from official plan?
Barb or Andrew, if you want to weigh in. If you're talking now, you're just on mute, so we need you to go off of mute.
Okay, in terms of the secondary plans, they are area specific. The official plan in this context, at least my understanding, was taking the 1997 plan with sort of fundamental motherhood policies and taking it from a plan that was designed for a town of 32,000 people that was growing to bring them current to policies that would help shape decisions for a community of 130 plus thousand that is continuing to grow. So based on all our experience, the secondary plans form part of the official plan, but they're area specific as opposed to overall growth, development policies, management strategies, bringing in climate change considerations, all these other considerations that go into the parent official plan that guides, and the parent official plan guides the development of the secondary plans. So what else do we need to know to be able to guide the development of future secondary plans?
Okay, I guess that answers my question. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else want to speak to the proposed sequencing? Councillor Challenor.
Thanks, Erin. I think that the sequencing is right. I mean, some of these things are going to be occurring at the same time. So an asset management plan requires, for the most part, a different staff team than does an official plan or a secondary plan. And so, you know, it's really important, especially economically. And so, you know, I agree. I'm comfortable with it where it is, and I think the official plan is again, we've started that process, and as Barb has explained, you kind of have to have this in place before you can have a more fulsome discussion on the secondary plans. And then the mobility hub, I have no problem with that. Intergovernmental relations, I think, is really a tactic. It's part of a larger communications plan, but you know, is it really strategic? And is it something that we're not doing today? I think we are. Could we do it better? Perhaps.
Thank you for that, Councillor Challenor. I don't know, your screen froze, so I'm not sure if you were cut off or. Okay, so if you're having issues, feel free to send me a chat there, and I can convey your comments. On the intergovernmental advocacy piece, Councillor Hameed and your group in group 3, Councillor De Lorenzo and Councillor Malbouf, am I right in understanding that was specific to the areas that aren't in your control, school planning, hospital planning, and GO?
It was even other areas as well, like just
Okay.
even like Development Charges Act and other provincial and other areas that we felt that Milton should be advocating for change.
Okay, great. So I don't want to drag this out for an unnecessarily long amount of time, but I do want to make sure that if anyone has any concerns that they're conveyed to the group. So if you're okay with the proposed sequencing, could you just go ahead and use that nonverbal feedback and give me a thumbs up? If I don't see a thumbs up, then I might call on you to ask for your thoughts.
I'll deal with it later.
Okay. So if you do want to speak further on the proposed sequencing, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. All right. I am not seeing any thumbs down. So let me ask the question to staff. Does this proposed sequencing give you that kind of directional feedback on order that you require, or do we need to spend some more time on that? Okay. I see some thumbs up from staff, so I think we're good. Great. Thank you so much for your feedback on that piece. 2 more to go. I don't want to, you know, say it out loud, but hopefully that means we're going to be out of here well in time before your 3 o'clock deadline, although I shouldn't have said that out loud. That was a mistake. So let's talk about increasing revenue potential. We have all 3 groups unanimous feelings about the economic development strategy. Then we have the OP and secondary plans in 2 of those, but the projects to diversify the local tax base also. So we have unanimous consent there. The MEV innovation corridor as well. And then the strategy to include office space and employment lands as kind of part of this column over here. So unanimous consent on the economic development strategy. We have unanimous consent on increasing employment lands through office space and employments. And we've got, in addition, the development charge update and MEV. So question to staff, if all of these were priorities with no particular order, are you feeling comfortable with this, or do we need to sequence this in the same way, or is it too many projects? So I think Glenn and Andrew. Oh, Andrew, is that a thumbs up from before?
No, that's my new thumbs up.
Okay, so let's move on. Everyone's comfortable. I'm going to scroll slowly. If you have concerns, please speak up. Scrolling deliberately slowly. Remember, if you're speaking up and you're on mute, then please unmute. Okay, let's head over to the last one, which was prioritizing initiatives under community attractiveness and competitiveness. So just a reminder, that was the station you were at with Christine. So under here, we have sustainability leadership. We've got a transit master plan. We've got MEV. We've got a diversity strategy. We've got regional transit partnerships. We've got a reopening strategy. And we've got urban design standards. So staff, how are we feeling about this? If these were all priorities in no particular order, would you be feeling comfortable with this, or are you feeling the need for more direction?
They're not all mine. So obviously, when I sat at this group, transit was obviously unanimous across the board. Everyone wanted transit. There was a lot of groups were getting very creative with trying to embed things within one another. So I expressed to all 3 groups, it would just be super helpful that council provides clarity on what the expectations are in terms of some of these items. Transit master plan to some people means something different than transit connectivity, and so just particularly what they're trying to get out of it. And the diversity strategy, we certainly talked about that as well. It definitely came up in all groups as being important, but whether or not it had to actually be a separate document was something that was still sort of unknown.
Great. So we definitely have some consensus on transit, as well as we have consensus on MEV. Now there'll be some further work that'll need to be done, and maybe it's both, whether it's local transit, whether it's regional transit partnerships, whether it's Go Advocacy, that would still need to be kind of flushed out and potentially sequenced. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Christine? Yeah, okay. Do we need to do that today, or are you feeling comfortable to put a framework around it?
I'm comfortable with what's within my department, but I'm not sure if others provide a little bit more clarity or understanding as to where things fit, because in a lot of these areas, they actually cross over departments too, right?
Mm-hmm. Great. Troy, I saw you raised your hand. Troy, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Erin. Yeah, so for the diversity strategy, we have already been working on some initiatives in HR, and I see that something like that could be wrapped into the people strategy then then its own separate strategy. So if that satisfies from that perspective, I'm more than happy with that direction.
I think a lot of the conversation, if I could just follow up, was actually about more external versus internal. In terms of getting out and speaking to people where they actually are in terms of whether it's their places of worship or whatever, and understanding what their needs are and how we can respond. But certainly the people strategy could take care of the internal piece, but there's still a larger external piece as well. It's just really whether or not council wants an actual document and to go through those exercises, or just start embedding some of these acknowledgements within everything that we do.
Councillor Ali, I see you have your hands up.
Thank you, Erin. And yes, I just wanted to further what Christine said, that it has to be internal and external both, because only when there is, homogeneous relationship between internal and external diversity, then we will see positive results that reflect in what we do. And, like Christine said, do we need a document, or I feel like we need action. So action is just looking at everything through the diversity lens. It is very, very imperative that we do that. And documents help for sure.
Okay, so we have unanimous consensus on MEV. We have unanimous consensus on transit, with the caveat that some clarification is going to be required, and some direction from council going forward regarding defining the primary issues that you're concerned with, whether it's the local system, whether it's the need for more partnerships with adjacent municipalities, or whether it is that Go advocacy piece. We've just discussed diversity strategy. Now that only came up in one group, but I wanted to get a sense, because we've discussed it with staff now, is diversity strategy something everyone wants to see? And what form that takes is still to be determined, but there's an understanding this is both internal and external. So I'm putting that on the list now. Can you please give me a thumbs up if you're excited about that, and a thumbs down if you'd like to speak about it?
No, Erin, forget about the thumbs business for a minute there.
Okay.
I was the one that raised it there. If you go back to early March, it didn't seem to be much of an issue with many. And I understand that very clearly, but what has happened in recent weeks and months is surfaced. If it's not at the top, it's pretty close to the top there. And I agree with Councillor Ali that it has to be recognized. However it's recognized, I really don't care. And I was the individual that brought it up and didn't want to forget about how important it is, not only today in this community, but going forward, especially, it's going to even be more critical. So I just make that point.
Thank you so much, Mayor Krantz. And I know you're not interested in the thumbs up, thumbs down, but know that there are a lot of thumbs up supporting what you just said. So virtual and people actually putting their thumbs up. So thank you so much for that, Mayor Krantz. Okay, so let's move on then to the sustainability leadership piece. And I know that this only came up as a top 3 in one group. Does anyone want to kind of provide some context into that? Someone who was in group 1 who raised it?
I guess I'll continue on, or I don't know if anybody else wanted to jump in. It's just obviously from a sustainability point of view, the sustainability plan isn't, I guess, tied into one thing. It isn't tied into, okay, we're going to hire this person. That's not what I see as a sustainability plan. It's looking at our asset management plan and seeing, as we're planning out a future repairs to our infrastructure and to our roads, to look at, we've seen in the news recently recycled plastic being used as road replacement. To always be looking for those types of options, to look through as whatever we do as a corporation from a climate lens, to focus in on. I know there's going to be some additional costs that are going to be involved in some of these new technologies, but to be able to have that option available, so that way when council does make its final decision, they can say that it looked at all options from, and I'm just using infrastructure as that particular point when we brought up the sustainability. But I think it's something that's going to be touching all aspects of the corporation and how we do business going forward.
Great. Thanks so much, Councillor Cluett. Now I'm about to clear all of the thumbs up from the previous, but I see Councillor Hameed, you have your hand up, I think. And Councillor Ali, I don't know if you're clapping for some previous comments or you're waving and putting your hand up. Do you want me to keep you on the speakers list or am I good to clear you? Okay, I'll clear you.
I was clapping for what his worship said.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure you didn't want to weigh in. Councillor Hameed, were you hoping to weigh in?
Yeah. So our group talked about sustainability as well, and it was our number 4 item. The reason we did not put that in top 3 is because we couldn't define, because we felt that sustainability is a generic term that can be interpreted and applied in so many different areas that we felt that it almost became meaningless. So what we wanted to do was, we understand that we need to look at every single thing through the sustainability lens. But in order to put it here, we wanted to specify it more. So which aspect of sustainability and what we meant by it. So I'm not sure if other groups discussed that, if they had a solution or not, because otherwise sustainability becomes something that just that's just so generic and so open to interpretation that it almost becomes, our group felt that almost becomes meaningless. So I'm not sure if others had thought on how to make it more specific, like what area of sustainability. Councillor Cluett had a good example that I really liked. But beyond that, like, are we talking about, the last time we had discussion, suggestions came up about electrifying transit buses because that's sustainable, planting more trees because that's sustainable, recycling more because that's sustainable, but we weren't sure exactly what area we wanted to focus on.
Great.
No, I agree with you, Councillor Hameed. That was essentially where we were trying to get as it's got to be it should be part of the priorities, but sustainability to a sustainability plan to me might be different than a sustainability plan for you or for any other member of council. So I think that's why further discussion needs to be had on it, so that way we can say when Milton says sustainability plan, it means this, and it's difficult to prioritize it. It's in that way.
So Councillor Cluett and Councillor Hameed, we have above the specific initiatives you want to prioritize, we do have kind of general thoughts from council that came as general strategies from the March 9th workshop. And demonstrating to leadership and sustainability was, well, it made it on that list. I wonder if that kind of incorporates, Councillor Cluett, what you're saying as, in a general sense, we want to make sure we're incorporating the sustainability lens into what we do in our daily business. Councillor Hameed, I see your hand up. Would you like to weigh in?
Yeah. So I was thinking about giving direction to staff. So if the council is giving direction to staff and we say, look, we want to be leader in sustainability, it doesn't really tell staff what council's priorities are. It's just a generic term, go be a leader. But what does that really mean? Like, so I felt that if you consider direction from council to staff, it wasn't really concrete and it wasn't really clear. There's really no way to define success criteria because staff can do 20 different things and come back to council, and the council might still feel that they fell short because be a leader in sustainability is just such a generic, fluffy statement. So what I wanted to do was, I'm hoping that over the next little while, councillors clarify what outcome they want to see, because that way staff will have clear direction on what to do in order to be successful in being a leader in sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor Hameed. Were you hoping for that today or generally speaking?
Well, I don't think we can do it today because I think it's going to take hours and hours of discussion. But just for example, right, to some councillor, being a leader in sustainability might mean a transit system that allows anyone to go from anywhere to anywhere in the next 15 minutes so we can leave our cars at home. Whereas for somebody else, it means a lot more green space. And to a third councillor, it might mean being number 1 in recycling. And to fourth councillor, it might mean going paperless. So I really would like the council to give staff a clearer direction in what we want to see.
Okay, I see some thumbs up there. Is that generally what everyone on council is thinking? Give me a thumbs up if you are excited about that or feel 70% okay with it, or thumbs down if you want to speak out.
I just thumbs up my own comment.
Okay, well, that's helpful for me. Thank you. So again, got Councillor Tessler Dirksen likes everybody is good. So if I see no thumbs, am I assuming people are just 70% comfortable with it? Okay, people were just late for the thumbs. That's great. Well, I don't see any thumbs down. So maybe we could include that with the caveat to your point, Councillor Hameed, that that's still, the direction is specifically to be determined. But in a general sense, all council is on board. From a feedback scenario, of course, you're not voting on this till July 20th, but from a feedback perspective, with fleshing that out further. You have any concerns with that, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll move on to urban design standards. So urban design standards came up from group 3. Group 3, do you want to speak to that at all? Sorry, group 3 is Councillor Hameed, Councillor De Lorenzo, and Councillor Malbeuf.
I think we were looking at community attractiveness and competitiveness, and we felt that urban design standard was one way where we can handle not just attractiveness, but also competitiveness, but other areas like sustainability as well, because urban design standard can potentially specify how we place and design high density development, for instance, that makes it more transit friendly. And also how do we integrate nature into how we build, so it handles the whole green space part as well. So we felt the urban design standard was a way of clarifying one area of sustainability that we want to see leadership in.
Great. Anyone want to speak about urban design standards as a potential priority along with MEV, transit, diversity strategy, and fleshing out the sustainability piece? Anyone want to speak to that? Okay, just catching up on the chat here. I don't see anyone wanting to speak to it. So that together with the reopening strategy, Christine, do you want to talk to us about the reopening strategy? Is that something you're considering as a priority already? Will it be problematic if we include this on top of this list, Christine or Andrew?
To be honest, it's something that we have to do regardless as to where it falls on the priority list if we want to continue with our services. So I know it came up only once in the group discussions. I think it's just because we just talked about it really on Monday, and I think there's just general acknowledgement that we are going to be phasing in our facilities and reopening, adhering to council's direction and moving forward. But there's definitely going to be some changes in our workloads for sure moving forward as a result of recovery and trying to get all our programs and services reopened again. So I think that's more a reason for why it's super important for just understanding what council's directions and expectations are so that we can align our resources to make sure that we can meet those expectations.
Great, thank you. Any comments? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
It obviously becomes an immediate priority for us, no matter what it is that we're doing. But for us, it's more about what does the lessons learned from COVID and the changes to work and work strategies and how work is done and what it means to us going forward in the longer term.
Great. So if we had this list as MEV, transit with an asterisk, Christine, about to your point about local, regional, go considerations, diversity strategy, both internal and external, the need to flush out and assign some time to get some direction from council around the sustainability leadership piece, urban design standards and reopening strategy, and maybe if there's question or resourcing pressures sequenced in this way, of course, with the obvious consideration that a reopening strategy is something you've got to do anyway. Is there any concerns with the way this is listed right now? Feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak up. don't see any hands up. Andrew and the team, the strategic management team, are you feeling comfortable with this, or do you require further direction?
It's fine.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. I'll pull my slides back up again because we've got through all 4 focus areas. So I will stop sharing this and pull up the slide deck. So you made it through the group exercise. The next steps then are to take all of this feedback that you've provided today. Thank you so much for taking the time. And the plan is to present a work plan to you for a vote for your final consideration and hopefully approval at your July 20th meeting. Aside from a thank you for your enthusiastic participation, for your willingness to do this in a virtual format, I think I would just say thank you. Feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have any questions or concerns. My contact information is here. And I'd like to turn it over to Andrew and/or the mayor for any closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Erin, for a very informal and very productive workshop there. I thank you very much and look forward to the ultimate decision on July the 20th. And again, timing is just perfect. I know I'll be with 2 or 3 of my colleagues very, very shortly in the next 10 minutes or so. But Andrew, you got the last word.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank everybody for working through the process. I am perfectly aware that not everybody loves this exercise. For some, it's more tedious than others, but extremely important for staff to understand where council comes from in terms of setting priorities so that we can get our directions as to in what order things are important to you. And when we have that clear direction, it makes our job a lot easier. And with scarce resources and scarce amount of time, that's as important exercise as we ever go through. So I would just say thanks to council for their commitment to this exercise and grinding through it, because I know it's not the favorite specifically for many people around the table. So thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Name them.